Hi there, and welcome to a sleep story with Relax My Brain. If you're here, then you're ready to fall into a deep sleep. I'm sure that you work very hard and that you need this sleep so that you can recharge and be ready for the rest of the day or the rest of the week or whatever it is that you need. So, in order to find complete relaxation, tonight we're going to read a story. And this story is called How the Alphabet Was Made by Rudyard Kipling. The week after Taffy Metalami, we'll call her Taffy, made that little mistake about her daddy's spear and the stranger man and the picture letter and all, she went carp fishing again with her daddy. Her mommy wanted her to stay at home and help hang up hides to dry on the big drying poles outside their Neolithic cave. But Taffy slipped away down to her daddy quite early, and they finished. Presently, she began to giggle, and her daddy said, "Don't be silly, child." "But it was inciting," said Taffy. "Don't you remember how the head chief puffed out his cheeks, and how funny the nice stranger man looked with the mud in his hair?" "Well, do I?" said Tagamai. "I had to pay 2 deerskins, soft ones with fringes, to the stranger man for the things we did to him." "We didn't do anything," said Taffy. "It was Mommy and the other Neolithic ladies, and the mud." "We won't talk about that," said her daddy. "Let's have lunch." Taffy took a marrow bone and sat mousy quiet for 10 whole minutes while her daddy scratched on pieces of birch bark with a shark's tooth. Then she said, "Daddy, I've thought of a secret surprise. You make a noise, any sort of noise." "Ah," said Tagamai. "Will that do to begin with?" "Yes," said Taffy. "You look just like a carp fish with its mouth open. Say it again, please." "Ah, ah, ah," said her dad. "Don't be rude, my daughter." "I'm not meaning rude, really and truly," said Taffy. "It's part of my secret surprise think. Do say 'ah, Daddy,' and keep your mouth open at the end, and lend me that tooth. I'm going to draw a carp fish's mouth wide open." "What for?" said her daddy. "Don't you see?" said Taffy, scratching away on the bark. "That will be our little secret surprise. When I draw a carp fish with his mouth open in the smoke at the back of our cave. If Mommy doesn't mind, it will remind you of that ah noise. Then we can play that it was me jumped out of the dark and surprised you with that noise. Same as I did in the beaver swamp last winter." "Really?" said her dad, in the voice that grown-ups use when they are truly attending. "Go on, Taffy." "Oh, bother," she said. "I can't draw all of a carp fish, but I can draw something that means a carp fish's mouth. Don't you know how they stand on their heads rooting in the mud? Well, here's a pretense carp fish. We can play that the rest of him is drawn." Here's just his mouth, and that means ah, and she drew this. That's not bad, said Tegumai, and scratched on his own piece of bark for himself. But you've forgotten the feeler that hangs across his mouth. But I can't draw, Daddy. You needn't draw anything of him except just the opening of his mouth and the feeler across. Then we'll know he's a carp fish, 'cause the perches and trouts haven't got feelers. Look here, Taffy. And he drew a picture. Now I'll copy it, said Taffy. Will you understand this when you see it? Perfectly, said her daddy. And she drew as well. And I'll be quite as surprised when I see it anywhere, as if you had jumped out from behind a tree and said, ah. Now make another noise, said Taffy, very proud. Ya, said her daddy, very loud. Said Taffy. That's a mixy noise. The end part is ah carpfish mouth. But what can we do about the front part? Yer, and ah, ya. It's very like the carpfish mouth noise. Let's draw another bit of the carpfish and join 'em, said her daddy. He was quite incited too. No, if they're joined, I'll forget. Draw it separate. Draw his tail. If he's standing on his head, the tail will come first. Besides, I think I can draw tails the easiest, said Taffy. A good notion, said Tegumai. Here's a carpfish tail for the yer noise. And he drew the carpfish tail. I'll try now, said Taffy. Remember, I can't draw like you, Daddy. Will it do if I just draw the split part of the tail and the sticky down line for where it joins? And she drew just that. Her daddy nodded, and his eyes were shiny bright with excitement. That's beautiful, she said. Now make another noise, Daddy. Oh, said her daddy, very loud. That's quite easy, said Taffy. You make your mouth all around like an egg or a stone. So an egg or a stone will do for that. You can't always find eggs or stones. We'll have to scratch around something like one. And he drew a circle. My gracious, said Taffy. What a lot of noise pictures we've made. Carp mouth, carp tail, and egg. Now let's make another noise, Daddy. Shh, said her daddy, and frowned to himself. But Taffy was too incited to notice. That was quite easy, she said, scratching on the bark. What? Said her daddy. I meant I was thinking and didn't want to be disturbed. It's a noise just the same. It's the noise a snake makes. Daddy, when it's thinking and doesn't want to be disturbed, let's make the shh noise a snake. Will this do? And she drew another shape. There, she said. That's another surprise secret. When you draw a hissy snake by the door of your little back cave where you mend the spears, I'll know you're thinking hard, and I'll come in most mousy quiet and if you draw it on a tree by the river when you're fishing, I'll know you want me to walk most mousy quiet so as not to shake the banks. Perfectly true, said Tagamai. And there's more in this game than you think. Taffy, dear, I've a notion that your daddy's daughter has hit upon the finest thing that there ever was since the tribe of Tagamai took using the shark's teeth instead of flints for their spearheads. I believe we've found out the big secret of the world. Why? Said Taffy, and her eyes shone with too much excitement. I'll show you, said her daddy. What's water in the Tagamai language? Ya, of course, and it means river, too. Like Wagai Ya, the Wagai River. What is bad water that gives you fever if you drink it? Black water? Swamp water? Yo, of course. Now look, said her daddy. Suppose you saw this scratched by the side of a pool in the beaver swamp. And he drew another shape. Carp tail and round egg. Two noises mixed. Yo, bad water, said Taffy. 'Cause I wouldn't drink that water, because I'd know you said it was bad. But I needn't be near the water at all. I might be miles away, hunting, and still it would be just the same as if you stood there and said, Go away, Taffy, or you'll get fever. All in that carp fish tail and round egg. Oh, Daddy, we must tell Mommy, quick. And Taffy danced all around him. Not yet, said Tagamai. Not until we've gone a little further. Let's see. Yo is bad water, but so is food cooked on the fire, isn't it? And he drew another shape. Yes, snake and egg, said Taffy. So that means dinner is ready. If you saw that scratched on a tree, you'd know it was time to come to the cave. And so would I. My Winky, said Tagamai. That's true too. But wait a minute. I see a difficulty. So means come and have dinner. But show means the drying poles where we hang our hides. Horrid old drying poles, said Taffy. I hate helping to hang heavy, hot, hairy hides on them. If you drew the snake and egg, and I thought it meant dinner, and I came in from the wood and found that it meant I was able to help Mommy hang the two hides. I hate helping to hang heavy, hot, hairy hides on them. If you drew the snake and egg, and I thought it meant dinner, and I came in from the wood and found that it meant I was to help Mommy hang the two hides on the drying poles, what would I do? You'd be cross. So would Mommy. We must make a new picture for show. We must draw a spotty snake that hisses. Shh, shh. And we'll play that plain snake, only hisses. I couldn't be sure how to put in the spots, said Taffy. And perhaps, if you were in a hurry, you might leave them out. And I'd think it was high drying poles their very selves, and make quite sure. I'll put them in just after the hissy snake. Look. And she drew this. Perhaps that's safest. It's very like our dying poles, anyhow, said her daddy, laughing. Now I'll make a new noise with a snake and drying pole around it. I'll say, shy. That's Tegami for spear, Taffy. And he laughed. Don't make fun of me, said Taffy, as she thought of her picture letter and the mud in the stranger man's hair. You draw it, Daddy. We won't have beavers or hills this time, huh? Said her daddy. I'll just draw a straight line for my spear. And he drew a shape. Even Mommy couldn't make mistake that for me being killed. Please don't, Daddy. It makes me uncomfy. Do some more noises. We're getting on beautifully. Ahem, said Tegumai, looking up. We'll say shu. That means sky. Taffy drew the snake and the drawing pole. Then she stopped. We must make a new picture for that end sound, mustn't we? Taffy drew the snake and the drawing pole. And then she stopped. Shoo, shoo. You, said her daddy. Why, it's just like the round egg sound made thin. Then suppose we draw a thin round egg and pretend it's a frog that hasn't eaten anything for years. No, said her daddy. If we drew that in a hurry, we might mistake it for the round egg. Shoo, shoo, shoo. I tell you what we'll do. We'll open a little hole at the end of the round egg to show how the O noise runs out all thin. Ooh, 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 like this. And he drew another shape. Oh, that's lovely. Much better than a thin frog. Go on, said Taffy, using her shark's tooth. Her daddy went on drawing, and his hand shook with excitement. He went on till he had drawn another shape. Don't look up, Taffy, he said. Try if you can make out what that means in the Tegumai language. If you can, we've found the secret. Snake, pole, broken egg, carp, tail, and carp mouth, said Taffy. Shuya, sky, water, or rain. Just then a drop fell on her hand, for the day had clouded over. Why, Daddy, it's raining. Was that what you meant to tell me? Of course, said her daddy, and I told you it without having to say a word, didn't I? Well, I think I would have known in a minute, but that raindrop made me quite sure. I'll always remember now. Shuya means rain, or it is going to rain. Why, Daddy, she got up and danced around him. Suppose you went out before I was awake and drawed Shuya in the smoke on the wall. I'd know it was going to rain, and I'd take my beaver skin hood. Wouldn't Mommy be surprised? Tegumai got up and danced. Daddies didn't mind doing those things in those days. More than that, he said. Suppose I wanted to tell you it wasn't going to rain, and you must come down to the river. What would we draw? Say the words in Tegume talk first. Shu ya las, ya maru. Sky water ending, river come to. What a lot of new sounds. I don't see how we can draw them. But I do, said Tegumai. Just attend a minute, Taffy, and we won't do any more today. We've got Shuya all right, haven't we? But this, lass, is a teaser. La, 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 and he waved his shark tooth. There's the hissy snake at the end, and the carp mouth before the snake. As. We only want la la, said Taffy. I know it, but we have to make la la, and we're the first people in all of the world who have ever tried to do it, Taffy. Well, said Taffy, yawning, for she was rather tired. Last means breaking or fishing as well as ending, doesn't it? So it does, said Tegumai. To last means that there's no water in the tank for Mommy to cook with, just when I'm hunting too. And Shilas means that your spear is broken. If only I'd thought of that instead of drawing silly beaver pictures for the stranger. La, said Tegumai, waving his stick and frowning. Oh, bother. I could have drawn she quite easily, Taffy went on. Then I'd have drawn your spear all broken this way, and she drew. I could have drawn she quite easily. The very thing, said Tegumai. That's la all over. It isn't like any of the other marks either. And he drew another shape. Now for ya. Oh, we've done that before. Now for maru. Mum. Mum shuts one mouth up, doesn't it? We'll draw a shut mouth like this. And he drew. Then the carp mouth open. That makes ma. But what about this thing, Taffy? It sounds all rough and edgy, like your shark tooth saw when you're cutting out a plank for the canoe, said Taffy. You mean all sharp at the edges like this? Said Tegumai, and he drew. Exactly, said Taffy, but we don't want all those teeth. Only put 2. I'll only put in 1, said Tegumai. If this game of ours is going to be what I think it will, the easier we make our sound pictures, the better for everybody. And he drew. Now we've got it, said Tegumai, standing on one leg. I'll draw 'em all in a string-like fish. Hadn't we better put a little bit of stick or something between each word, so they won't rub against each other and jostle, same as if they were carps? Oh, I'll leave space for that, said her daddy, and very excitedly he drew them all without stopping on a big new bit of birch bark. Shu ya las ya maru, said Taffy, reading it out sound by sound. That's enough for today, said Tegumai. Besides, you're getting tired, Taffy. Never mind, dear. We'll finish it all tomorrow. And then we'll be remembered for years and years after the biggest trees you can see are all chopped up for firewood. So they went home. And all that evening, Tegumai sat on one side of the fire and Taffy on the other, drawing yas and yos and shoes and she's in the smoke on the wall and giggling together till Mommy said, Really, Tegumai, you're worse than my Taffy. Please don't mind, said Taffy. It's only our secret surprise. Mommy dear, and we'll tell you all about it this very minute it's done. But please don't ask what's going on now, or else I'll have to tell. So her mommy most carefully didn't, and bright and early next morning, Tegumai went down to the river to think about new sound pictures. And when Taffy got up, she saw ya las, water is ending or running out, chalked on the side of their big stone water tank outside the cave. Said Taffy, these picture sounds are rather a bother. Daddy's just as good as come here himself and told me to get water for Mummy to cook with. She went to the spring at the back of the house and filled the tank from a bark bucket. And then she ran down to the river and pulled her daddy's left ear, the one that belonged to her to pull when she was good. Now come along and we'll draw all the leftover sound pictures, said her daddy. And they had a most inciting day of it, and a beautiful lunch in the middle, and 2 games of romps. When they came to tea, Taffy said that as her name, and as her daddy's and her mommy's all began with that sound, they should draw a sort of family group of themselves, holding hands. That was all very well to draw once or twice, but when it came to drawing it 6 or 7 times, Taffy and Tegumai drew it scratchier and scratchier, till at last the T sound was only a long, thin Tegumai with his arms out to hold Taffy and Teshumai. Many of the other pictures were much too beautiful to begin with, especially before lunch. But as they were drawn over and over again on birch bark, they became plainer and easier, till at least even Tegumai said he could not find any fault with them. They turned the hissy snake the other way round for the Z sound to show it was hissing backwards in a soft and gentle way. And they just made a twiddle for E because it came into the pictures so often. And they drew pictures of the sacred beaver, of the Tegumais for the B sound. And because it was a nasty, nosy noise, they drew noses for the N sound, till they were tired. And they drew a picture of the big lake's pike's mouth for the greedy Ga sound. And they drew the winding Wagai River for the nice, windy Wa sound. And so on and so forth, and so following, till they had done and drawn all of the sound pictures they wanted. There was the alphabet, all complete. And after thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and after hieroglyphics and demotics and nilotics and cryptics and cufics and runics and dorics and ionics, and all sorts of other ricks and tricks, because the wounds and the negusses and the akhuns and the repositories of tradition would never leave a good thing alone when they saw it. The fine, old, easy, understandable alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, and the rest of them got back into its proper shape again for all best beloveds to learn when they're old enough. But I remember Tegumai and Taffy and Teshumai, her dear mommy, and all the days gone by. And it was so, just so a little time ago, on the banks of the big Wagai,